All 256 games of the regular season are in the books, and I have to give huge props to the NFL because I thought that this season was going to get shut down at around week 10 or 11. I didn't think that this season was going to make it to Thanksgiving. But the NFL regular season is in the books, and none of the 256 games had to get canceled. The worst that had to happen were about maybe 5 or 6 games have to get postponed to a Monday or a Tuesday or even a Wednesday. But what a historic NFL season. We had a football game of the NFL on every single day of the week. That is a first. But now it is time to talk about the NFL playoffs. Now, for those of you that haven't listened to one of my videos when I've done this exact thing I'm about to do here, this is a power ranking among the playoff teams. Now, how I did it is I ranked them as far as their probability of winning Super Bowl 55. Now I'm going to start from 14 all the way down to 1. So 14 is who I think has no chance to win the Super Bowl, going down to 1, thinking who I think is the favorite to win this season's Super Bowl. So let's start with number 14. And at number 14, I have the Chicago Bears. Now let's look at some positives for the Chicago Bears. David Montgomery had a very strong season. And he really stepped up big time in the Bears running game after Tariq Cohen went down with an ACL injury early in the season. And the Bears, they do have a really talented defense. The Bears, they started off very strong this year. I believe they started 5-1. And that included fourth quarter comebacks against the Lions and the Falcons. But then the season for the Bears, it really went downhill really fast. Nick Foles went down against the Vikings on Monday Night Football, and then Mitch Trubisky became the quarterback again, and they started to lose some games. But then, the later on the season went, these last few weeks, the Bears have done really solid. I mean, they did lose in Week 17 against the Packers, but I thought they were holding their own in that game until the beginning of the fourth quarter when they couldn't convert that 4th and 1. But what's going to be the problem with the Bears in this playoffs is Mitch Trubisky. And I don't have the confidence that Mitch Trubisky can even get the Bears close to being in Tampa. In fact, I'll be surprised if the Bears even make it past this week. Number 13, I have the Washington football team. And the Washington football team, what a season that they've been through. Ron Rivera, he beat cancer this season in the middle of a pandemic. Alex Smith became the quarterback again after going through 18 surgeries in 9 months. And despite being in the NFC East and being in the worst division in football, I still think this Washington football team, they still got a really underrated defense. I said in the beginning that the Washington football team, they have the potential of having a top 5 defense in the entire National Football League. They do got a really solid running game of Antonio Gibson, who came back from a toe injury a couple weeks ago, J.D. McKissick, and even Peyton Barber. So if games come down to running the football, I think that Washington could have a really strong chance with the running backs that they have. But what my problem is with the Washington football team is Alex Smith being the game manager at best. But Washington football team is at 13. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if the football team won a game or two in this playoffs. I mean, they were the team that gave the Steelers their first loss of the season. And speaking of the Steelers, number 12, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the problem I have with the Steelers, yes, Big Ben is rested up after not playing Week 17, and they're going to have a lot of their stars that didn't play in Week 17 against the Browns. They're going to have them playing this week. But this is not getting past this week. This is hoisting the Super Bowl trophy in Tampa Bay. The Steelers, their running game hasn't been that existent this season. One of the worst, if not the worst, rushing offense statistically in the National Football League. And I think that's going to be a problem. Because when you look at the teams that have won the Super Bowl in the past, really solid running games. The Chiefs just last year, Damian Williams, very strong performance in that Super Bowl. Super Bowl 53, Sony Michel dominated that Super Bowl. Super Bowl 52, really dominant running game by the Eagles. 51, the running game was the difference in the passing game. So when you just look at the history of teams that have won the Super Bowl, they've had pretty strong running back play. And the Steelers, they just haven't had that. There's been issues on the offensive line. They are really thin at the linebacker position. I just don't like the Steelers' chances in the long run in this playoff. Number 11, I have the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I know it's kind of strange to have the Colts ahead of the Steelers, considering the Steelers beat the Colts head-to-head. But the Colts running game, I think, could surprise some people, particularly this week against Buffalo. Because when you have Jonathan Taylor, a very talented rookie, and you also you got Wilkins at running back, and you also have Nyheim Hines. That Colts running game, I think they could surprise some people. I think that if you can burn off the clock in these playoff games and keep your opposing offense on the sidelines, I think that could be huge. Plus, you have an experienced quarterback, a veteran quarterback in Phillip Rivers. T.Y. Hilton's getting back on his game a little bit in these last few weeks. So the Colts, they could be this year's Titans team. Pull off a massive upset in the wild card round, then find yourselves in the AFC Championship game. I think that this Colts team, they could be this season's Titans. At number 10, I have the Cleveland Browns. And sure, I can understand why you'd think I'm kind of strange or weird for putting the Browns ahead of the Steelers. But the Browns have been carried by their running game. Something that the Steelers, I don't think, have had in these last few weeks. While the Browns, ever since Nick Chubb came back off IR, this Browns team has looked a lot different. Baker Mayfield looks like a better quarterback. The Browns' offensive line has really been a huge difference, including first-round draft pick Jedrick Wills. He's been a huge difference. And the Browns do play the Steelers this week, and the Steelers are back to pretty much full strength, or what it would have been in Week 17 if they hadn't rested up everybody. But I think the Browns, they can make it a game this week against the Steelers. Number 9, I have the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, they are number 9. I mean, just last season we were talking about maybe the Ravens could be that team that could stop the Chiefs in their tracks. But the Ravens may be getting better. J.K. Dobbins has really carried the Ravens running game in these last handful of games. But Lamar Jackson, can he get over that hump of finally winning a playoff game? Because Lamar Jackson, he does good in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he just seems to freeze up. He just can't seem to get the job done. And going up against the Titans this week, which we can transition into this really well because the Titans I have at number 8. We saw them play early in the season, and Derrick Henry, he was a huge difference maker, just like Derrick Henry was in the playoffs last year. So I just think it's a tough hill to climb for the Ravens if they want to get to Tampa. Now, as I said a moment ago, at number 8, I have the Tennessee Titans. Now, last year I had the Tennessee Titans at number 12 out of 12 in my playoff rankings, and they made the Final Four. They were carried by Derrick Henry last season. And I'm getting the same vibe from the Titans this year as I did last year. Derrick Henry had a strong end of the season, and he had a strong end of the season this year as well. leading the league in rushing yards and going over 2,000 rushing yards this season. But if they want to make it to Tampa, somebody else has got to step up other than Derrick Henry. I feel like that they can't just be carried by Derrick Henry this entire playoff. Because we saw what happened in the AFC title game last year. The Chiefs, they shut down Derrick Henry pretty well. But if somebody else can step up for the Titans, I think that this team, we could see them in the AFC title game again this season. But if nobody can step up for Derrick Henry, I just don't like the Titans' chances moving forward. Number 7, I have the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the Rams, they have the best defense in the league. But the problem with the Rams is, will Jared Goff be able to play in these playoffs, or will they go to backup quarterback John Wolford? Now, if Jared Goff was healthy, I'd probably have the Rams, honestly, probably 4th in my playoff rankings. But I kind of have the Rams sort of in the middle here at 7, because I'm just not sure what the Rams' plan is moving forward, whether or not Wolford's going to be the quarterback or if Jared Goff is going to be able to come back in these playoffs for the Rams. But the running game for the Rams, led by Cam Akers, doing really well. Malcolm Brown is having to step up because Darrell Henderson is on the IR. But I think the Rams defense, I think they're the best defense in the league. Maybe they could be that defense that could stop the high-powered offenses of the Packers, the Saints, and even the Seahawks. But offensively, with their quarterback play, I'm just not sure how they're going to do with Wolford at quarterback. I think the Rams' best hope is for Jared Goff to return for the playoffs. At number 6, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Now, in the beginning of the season, we had Russell Wilson as possibly the favorite for MVP. But the Seahawks defense wasn't that good at all. In fact, the Seahawks, I believe they were last in pass defense at some point this season. But the Seahawks, they have gotten a lot better defensively ever since they traded for Carlos Dunlap at the trade deadline. So the Seahawks defense is starting to improve a bit. But the problem for the Seahawks, it could just be the fact that they're going to be right in the middle of some tough teams here. Because the Packers are the top seed in the NFC. You've got the Saints, who are doing pretty well, who really stepped up last week despite not having any running backs. But the Saints, they do seem to choke away wins in the playoffs. They seem to not do so well when it comes to the playoffs. And the Buccaneers, they're having a really good season with Tom Brady, who are in the playoffs the first time since 2007. But I still think that Russell Wilson, I think he could carry the Seahawks. I mean, the Seahawks are getting better defensively, but I'm just not sure. Number 5, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the Buccaneers, many thought that they were just going to automatically just cakewalk their way to Super Bowl 55 in Tampa. But did they forget that Super Bowl 55 was going to be in Tampa? And no team has ever made it to the Super Bowl the year that their city has hosted the big game. And could that continue? While Tom Brady has done well this season, we know who their kryptonite is in these playoffs, and that is the New Orleans Saints. In the 2 games we saw the Buccaneers and Saints play, the Saints just completely dominated the game from start to finish both times. Tom Brady looked like an average quarterback, looked like a mediocre quarterback in both showdowns against the Saints in the regular season. So those are 2 things that are holding back the Buccaneers. The fact that history is against them, and the fact that the Saints are their kryptonite. Number 4, I have the New Orleans Saints. Now the Saints, as I mentioned a moment ago, their history in the playoffs ever since they won their Super Bowl against the Colts hasn't done so well. I mean, they have struggled in the playoffs. And this is possibly, it's being rumored that this is Drew Brees' swan song season. So, in a way, for the Saints, this is their last chance. But will Alvin Kamara be able to return this week? Will any of the running backs be able to return this week? That is a huge concern. But the best thing for the Saints is they play the Bears on Wild Card Weekend. They play a Bears offense that has struggled at points in the season, but they were able to dominate against teams that weren't even close to playoff contention. And in Drew Brees' swan song season, this is possibly the last chance the Saints have of hoisting another Lombardi Trophy for at least the next decade. At number 3, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, they're coming to the playoffs on a hot streak. I mean, we saw the Bills lose 2 games in a row to the Titans and the Chiefs, getting blown up by the Titans on Tuesday Night Football. And I think they had a pretty close battle against the Chiefs on a Monday afternoon game in the rain. And in that game, Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the Chiefs, he really shredded apart that Bills run defense. And the Chiefs, they didn't win it with Patrick Mahomes that night, well, that afternoon, but they won it with the running game. And ever since those 2 straight losses, the Titans and the Chiefs, the Bills have won 9 out of their last 10 games, with their only loss being to the Cardinals on that Hail Murray pass. Other than that, the Bills, they have just dominated everybody they've played this season after those 2 losses. So the Bills are coming in on a hot streak. And I believe Governor Cuomo has announced that a limited number of fans will be able to attend the Bills' playoff games. And they're going to be distance apart. So I think that can be huge for the Bills, huge for Bills Mafia, that knowing that this is the best Bills team that they've had since the Jim Kelly days. And I will be honest, if the Bills and Chiefs would play this week, I think the Bills have a really good shot of upsetting the Chiefs. Since Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it's unknown if he's going to play in these playoffs, if he's going to be able to return, as he was a big difference maker in that Monday afternoon game. Now, on to the top 2 now. Now, it's no surprise that these are my top 2 in the playoff power rankings, because these 2, they seem like the favorites to end up in Tampa. At number 2, I have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. So the NFC playoffs, they have to go through Green Bay. Now, what's interesting is a comment that Collinsworth made on Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago on how, with no fans being in attendance, Aaron Rodgers has been able to pick up on some communications on defense. And he's been able to really communicate with the coaching staff when he's on offense. And the Packers, Aaron Rodgers throwing more touchdown passes this season than the Packers have punted the football. And when you have stats like that, you have one great offense. In fact, probably the only offense that could match up to the Chiefs. And I do think if we were to see a Chiefs and Packers Super Bowl, I think that this would be one of the best Super Bowls that we've had, because I think both these teams, they do match up equally. With Aaron Rodgers, you always have a chance for the Packers. Devontae Adams can be a mismatch for anybody. And we've seen the Packers running game come to form these last few weeks, especially with rookie running back A.J. Dillon out of Boston College. And Aaron Jones, he has missed a chunk of the season, but a healthy Aaron Jones, I think, just adds another weapon to this Packers offense. And the Packers defense has been pretty solid this season. Not one of the best ones, but not one of the worst ones either. And at number 1, the favorite to win Super Bowl 55, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs are the defending champions. And you have the explosive offense of Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, and Le'Veon Bell, who is just trying to win one championship. The biggest question mark for the Chiefs, well, there's two of them. One, can Clyde Edwards-Helaire come back for these playoffs? Because Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a difference maker against the Bills in their matchup, as I mentioned earlier. And two, a defending Super Bowl champion has not repeated since 2004 with the Patriots. So it's been about 16, 17 years since we've seen a repeat Super Bowl champion. But if there were to be a team to repeat, this would be the team to bet on. Just because of how talented they are, based off how good of a head coach Andy Reid is, now that Andy Reid has finally got his Super Bowl ring, I think that the sky's the limit for this Chiefs team. And what kind of distractions could be facing the Chiefs? Because Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator, has already interviewed with the Atlanta Falcons, and he's already been requested to be interviewed by two other teams. So, if news would break of Eric Bieniemy being rumored to be a head coach for one of those teams, could that be a distraction? So, those are my NFL playoff power rankings. Comment your power rankings down below. Predict who you think is going to represent the Super Bowl in Tampa this February. And I will talk to you next time.